you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Voss here from theChrisVossShow.com. There sings it. That makes it official. My gosh, we're still here. It's a Monday, and we're still alive and kicking, bringing you guys 2 to 3 new shows every day, every weekday on the Chris Voss Show, at least Monday through Thursday, and entertaining you with all the amazing authors, minds, and inspiring folks that we have on the show. As always, we are the oldest living podcast that still broadcasts 1 to 2 shows a day. There's no one else doing that. So please support us. Please. We need your love and attention, and I don't know, we just like a hug, really. But you know what? You can make up for all that since you can't hug me in person. You go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, or family and friends to youtube.com, facebook.com, linkedin.com/Chris Voss. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today's featured author comes to us from bookstolifemarketing.co.uk. With expert publishing to strategic marketing, they help authors reach their audience and maximize their book success. Today we have an amazing young lady on the show. We're going to be talking about her books, and the book we're leading off with today is entitled Christmas Poems by Suzanne W. Gwynne. We're getting into it with her and find out some of the deets on her insights, her poetry, and how she inspires people through it. Does that sound like a good idea? I think so. Suzanne began writing poetry as a teenager. Though few were written in the ensuing years, once her family was raised, she began writing more and more. She's been much more prolific in the 20 years plus. To date, she has written almost 500 poems. Suzanne has a bachelor's degree in music, master's degrees in library science, and in fine art. She and her husband of 55 years, Michael, have four grown children and 5 grandchildren. It's Monday for me, folks. Welcome to the show, Suzanne. How are you?
I'm doing fine, and I got an update. I now have, as of a week and a half ago, we now have our first great-grandchild.
You have a first great-grandchild. Oh, my gosh. Wow. Did that happen during the show? That's pretty fast.
Yeah, no, it was in the middle of July. And thank you for keeping me young.
Well, we got a half an hour to 45 minutes to kill here. Maybe a 7th one will show up.
Yeah, you never know.
So welcome to the show. Give us your .coms. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
You can find some of my poem books on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble. I think Google Books, I think, also carries them. And then you can also find them on my own website, and it's called crowningtouchartistry.weebly.com. It's on the Weebly's website that you can create your own. So that's Crowning Touch Artistry. And you'll find on there the books that I do, my paintings, other interests that I have. And if you just click on the books link, it'll take you right to each of those books, and you can order them yourself.
All right. Well, that's awesome. Give us a 30,000 overview. What's inside your book?
On the Christmas poems?
Yes.
Obviously, they're Christmas poems. I couldn't think of a unique title, but there are some of the poems that are of a scriptural point of view, the actual meaning of Christmas. Some of them are more along the lines of secular stories. One is a letter to Santa. One is a letter from Santa. And then there's one I was going to look up a minute ago, what ones I got in there. One, I think, is the cross in the manger. It talks about actually why Jesus was born and why he came to this earth. So there's quite a variety. I think there's about 45 poems in that book. So it's not really a lot. It's a thin book and easy to read. In fact, any of my poems are, you can sit down with your favorite drink and put your feet up. If you like something that's encouraging or relaxing, I don't write any of the stuff that's angst
Mhm.
or gothic or dark. Any of that kind of poetry. Mine is more gentle and enlightening, I guess you could say, in poetic form.
Ah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Now, the one thing I was going to ask you is the what inspires you to write poetry?
I've had people ask me that before, and it's interesting because it's not just any one thing. It'll be a variety of things. Sometimes it's something I hear somebody say, a phrase, and I'm like, that makes a good poem. There was one time when I was at church, and the way my pastor presented a prayer, and I don't think it was one that was read. It was just one that he created or read himself. And I was like, that's got a poetic form to it. We brought it over Facebook. I went home, started watching it again, and ended up taking that and writing it into a poem. Another way that I'm inspired, it may be something that I see, an object, it might be an event or the time of year, like a season or nature, holidays. And so a lot of my poems are inspired by that. We just had our 250th birthday, so I've written several patriotic poems as well based on that theme. So there's just a variety of things. There was one time though when I went to our neighboring town, a small dam. The river is fairly wide, but the dam is just a concrete dam, and it has a place where you can go down and sit down and just listen to the water, watch the water as it comes over the falls. It's just kind of a relaxing place. And I looked down and there was a potato chip bag.
Oh,
And that kind of spoils the scene. Oh, this wonderful beauty of nature, and there's a potato chip bag. Really? And so then I went home and wrote a poem about the potato chip bag. But from that potato chip bag, I came to this conclusion, and that if it's okay with you, I'll read the two last verses of that poem.
okay.
I took it with me and threw it away, but though it reminded me that others have come, I wanted the view to look natural today, but its message I kept as I had at home. We're not the only ones that have been down this road. Others before us took time to see the beauty around us, no matter the day. So ere when life seems hard to bear, be watchful for moments that are waiting for you and me.
It's important to look around and be watchful. And I like there's so many times where I'm a photographer, so many times I go into a scene or look at something and either something messes it up or sometimes I take a picture and something will be in the background that messes it up. And you're like, oh, crap. I was taking some pictures this weekend of some old pioneer buildings and they're kind of fun. But the problem was sometimes I was getting background of cars that were modern and modern housing because they were surrounded by modern housing. But it was this old farm area, and I kept having to try and so maybe it's a I don't know what the right word is for it, but maybe it's an example of how life's not perfect, the world's not perfect. In every beautiful sunset, there's probably a fly.
Yeah. Another thing too is this potato chip bag really was telling me that somebody else had been there and they had enjoyed the same scene that I was now watching. Sometimes these things that we think are out of place or what are you doing here and you just spoil everything. Stop and think about it. Maybe it doesn't. Now I thought of something about your cars and your pioneer building. Shows history. Here's a house that was really old. And here's a modern car that's driving by. And what has taken place in between those dates when each of those were created? So,
it'd be cool if I get a side by side of one. Like there's old pioneer home and this new home right there.
And so it really talks about history unintentionally.
Yeah. Yeah. I could draw some eyes on it and it could be the old home could be looking at the new home going, really?
And the headlights eyes won't look back.
Yeah. Seriously? This is where you
My weird mind.
It was kind of funny though. The older places I was wandering through, they're all log homes or wood and stuff like a wood mill. There's like so much space between the boards and there was no insulation.
I know.
Just out of these. Yeah, you would have to wear a freaking coat Back then, they really had winters. We don't really have winters anymore, it seems like. Unless you live in an area that never had winters, then you're having winters now. So, and then if you live in places where we used to have winters, it's summer. It's like basically living on Vegas right now. So, what kind of poetry do you typically write? I think you've written 4 books. Did you mention?
That's correct. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yep. God Bless America is the patriotic poems that I've written, and I've even written a few more since that one was published, given that this is our 250th birthday for our country. A coffee table book called Heart Songs. I'm an artist as well as an author, and so this has pictures of some of my paintings and then poems that correlate with what those paintings are. I'm sorry. I think I better turn that down.
Yeah.
They can leave a message later. I fell and broke my leg 3.5 months ago.
Oh, wow.
So, that's been fun. But so I get home help therapy. Yeah, that was what that was up.
There you go.
I made Nipper at Uvalde several years ago, about 4 years ago. And that inspired me to write a poem about what happened there. Sometimes it's topics, maybe even political topics that I have written poems about. One is called Native American, or I'm a Native American. I should say this probably up front, maybe. I'm conservative. I'm pretty protective of our American history, and for lots of reasons. I've got roots that go way back, some lines even to the Mayflower, and those that were in the Revolutionary War. So when Christopher Columbus came to this country, and this is true of any of us, we respond or act on what knowledge we know of it. So as far as he knew, he had arrived in India, and all these people walking around were Indians. Then later they realized, no, they hadn't. So then they were labeled American Indians. Our politically correct people wanted to change that and call them Native Americans. And so I kind of took, in a friendly way, upbridge about that, if that's, I think, the right word, or an offense. Because I'm a Native American. Because what does the word Native mean? It means where you're born.
Oh, there you go.
I was born in America, so I'm also a Native American. So to call them a Native American confuses the mind if you think of it literally. So I wrote a poem about that topic and mentioned the fact that although Columbus didn't necessarily understand what he had actually found, he still operated on the knowledge he knew. And as far as he was concerned, they were American Indian, or they were Indians, and they labeled them American. So to try to change history really doesn't change the facts.
That's true. That's true. What would you say is the style that you have in the books that you've written so far?
Most of my poetry is 4 lines to a verse, and then okay, that dropped it. There is stress vowels in poetry, and they are called by different names. Hold on. And I wrote them down, and now I lost them. But pick is probably the most popular, which is stressed, unstressed. And then there's what's called trochee, which is just the reverse. And then there's 2 more, and they're odd terms. And like I say, I wrote them down. Now I can't put my hands on. Where it's 1 stressed, 2 unstressed, or 2 unstressed and 1 stressed. Like in the garden, your emphasis is on in. Mother, what did I can't think on the spot, something to make up. But anyway, so my poetry pretty much falls within those 4 areas of what you call foot. And then there's so many feet to a line that has a terminology as well. But there have been exceptions in some of the poems that I have written. And one is called Pictures of Water. I'm going to hold this up to the camera. I know you can't read it, but you can see the length of the line. That is not typical to what I normally write. And maybe more like this, where there's the 4 lines and so many verses, whatever. But in Pictures of Water, this was an interesting poem even to me because the lines don't necessarily rhyme, but the words within the line will rhyme. And I'll just read a few of those.
Okay.
Because I don't want to take up a lot of time. Summer. This is water in summer. Foam, fun, spray, sun. That's one line. Drips, drizzles, drops, frizzles. Angry, gentle, blinding, mental. Rolling, crashing, pounding, smashing. Drowning, dragging, dripping, nagging. Cleansing, shower, energy, power. Cascades, ocean sprays, Everglades, dreamy days. Tributaries, sanctuaries. I like this one. Embryonic universe. Now, I don't know where that came from, but if you think about it, before a baby is born, that's his whole world. Embryonic universe, unexpected lightning burst. Flooding, fury, torrents, hurry, puddles, pools. So that is an out of the ordinary style of poetry that I write, but it was fun and it's a little unique, that's for sure.
Yeah, and uniqueness is good when it comes to these things. Do you have a favorite poem? Or was maybe that one that you mentioned?
Yeah, I do. And it has to do with 9/11.
Oh, wow. That's a hell of a subject to take on.
Yes. And speaking of styles of poetry, this is more analogous, if you will. I took the idea of an eagle representing America. And I won't read all of it either. I'll just maybe read some of the first and last verses. She climbed the currents and soared the skies. He kept watch o'er nest and her allies to help protect those in her world as she flew forth with wings unfurled. She cared for all, though poor and king, that fell beneath her shadowing wing. Yet evil lurked throughout the land, and deep inside the heart of man, they planned their day to maim and kill. Their goal, the eagle's heart to still. They did not know her strength and skill of those who'd rallied from her trill. As she rose up that fateful morn, the scenes she saw filled her with scorn. She swooped and cawed her mad alarm, but could not stop that dreadful harm. Some chicks were hurt and more were dead. The smoke and fire raged overhead. What have they done, and why choose here, this land that stands for freedom's due? And then it goes on explaining the tragedy that happened and the response from other nations. And it ends up with, so she rose up, her strength renewed, shook off the dust to build anew. She's stronger now and wiser too, for truth is freedom's best review. They missed her spirit on that day. They tried, but could not take away the heart and soul of freedom's flame, though still they chant their hate and blame.
That's powerful.
There's a few more verses too, but that gives you the gist of about. And using the eagle as a representative of our country, and of course she was our national symbol, and so that was rather appropriate, I thought.
Yeah, it is. That's quite a poem, and it's it's hard to take on that subject, but I think you embraced it well. Now, there's another book we wanted to profile too, called Poems of Everyday Life. Tell us a little bit about that.
That was the first book that I ever published. As I began writing more prolifically my poetry, I started posting them on my Facebook page, and I had a lot of people say to me, "Have you ever published a book? Or why don't you publish a book?" And I'm like, I don't know anything about it. So initially what I did was I just went to a printer and printed off 50 copies. And then later I thought maybe I ought to just do an actual published book. And so then I contacted a publisher and did that. And that can be found on Amazon and also on my website. And it has a variety of poems in it, like examples of what I mentioned earlier, inspirational or humorous. Some are about nature or holidays or families. So it kind of touches on the ordinary things of life. And the idea is to draw your attention to them, because sometimes in our daily life, we just walk by and just totally miss things. And this makes you stop and think and pause and look around. I discovered I did a presentation Friday on why poetry. And I discovered something that I didn't even know. Poetry is the oldest form of literature in all of mankind. It goes back to about 3000 something BC. And what people don't realize, even though it has the lowest appeal of readership, poetry is something unique to any other kind of literature. And because of its meter and the rhythm to it, it forces you to stay within that space of poetry. And if you will, pauses you to stop and think about what the message is that's being talked about in poems. Literature, novels, and don't do that, because you can be reading a story and if you're like, this is just too much, and you can kind of speed read through it and get to the end and still get the gist of it. You can't do that with poetry. You're going to have to sit there and read line by line.
Line by line.
You don't miss the point of what is being said.
No skipping, as they like to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I think you answered my question there of why you think poetry is important. And I imagine part of what you also talked about, making us give depth to everyday things that maybe we take for granted or we don't acknowledge, and, give depth and value to them. It's saying, hey, this is kind of important, and maybe you should look at it harder, look at it more, or understand it more, maybe.
Slow down and take time to note the little things of life too.
Yeah.
Like a potato chip bag.
Note the little things of life too. That's really important too, and noting the important things in life, because that can mean so much when it comes down to being grateful, having gratitude, being thankful for what you have. And so many times we get caught up in the menagerie of life and everything and the speed of it, and we don't take time to stop and smell the roses. So that's really good. Yeah.
One thing that I discovered was in researching for that presentation is the comment was made, it may not change or give you the answer to climate change, but it will make you stop and think even about the important, not just the ordinary little things of life, but some of the big things as well. Does God exist? Does he have anything to do with me? Is there an afterlife? Is there meaning to my being here? Is there a heaven or a hell? Do they really exist? And so that's something else that poetry will do. And American poetry, or poetry as we normally think of it, is not exactly the same as other countries. You go to scripture and your psalms are Hebrew poetry. And they may not go with meter or rhyme, but sometimes it's how many syllables in a line or how many words in a line. Then you've got the Japanese haiku, which is 2 lines, then 5 lines, and 7 or something like that. But they're no matter what style or culture they come from, they all have the same purpose of drawing your attention to the message of that poem.
Yeah. And they can be almost more complex, because usually when someone writes in the vernacular of a poem, they have to be really sometimes succinct or very economic with the amount of words or words that they use, especially if you're working with a haiku. And so you've got to be, you've got an economy that you have to work with, and once you're out of it, you got to roll with it and somehow still be able to tell a story, right?
I have often gone back and read over a poem that I had written and had too many words in a line, and I could think of one word that would replace 3 or 4, and it fit the meter better. So that's something you've got to keep in mind as well.
And now, with your background, your education, your family, and evidently you have a bit of a music background. How does all that experience affect your poetry?
That's a fascinating subject, actually, because music and poetry, I made the comment one time that they're almost like identical siblings because they go together just hand in hand. Poems and music are so much alike. And if I can find where I wrote that down. Poems have meter, beat, pattern, and rhyme. Music has measures, timing, and pattern. They're not necessarily rhyme, but they have your what's called the one chord in whatever key you're in. Then you want your music to end on that one chord of that key. So that kind of like creates a rhyme, if you will. And so poems and music just naturally flow together. Now, I realize in contemporary music, sometimes the actual words don't rhyme, but they still have to have a certain meter to it and a certain length of line to fit the music that you want. And
otherwise, it sounds kind of weird, huh? It gets funky.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. Another thing that's interesting about poems and music that nothing else does, music, I would have to say more so than poetry, it causes the brain to create new synapses because it touches so many different parts of the brain. And then as you're listening or playing that music, it brings them all together. Actually, and maybe this is a subject for another time, but music is important in the education world because it is, in a sense, the base, as far as I'm concerned, the discipline of that for everything else.
Yeah.
To me, it's that important. But my musical background, my personal music background, the fact that I was trained and have a degree in music has gone a long way in helping me to understand the flow of poetry as well. And some of them have been such a music.
Really? I guess technically a lot of hymns might be kind of poetic. So what do you hope people come away with when they read your books?
I hope for one thing, it'll be a time of refreshment, a time of relaxing, a time of renewal. Maybe it'll stop and make them think about whatever the message is of the poem. Again, in my research that I did, one of the things I came across was mention the fact that you have your way of thinking. Sometimes poetry will make you stop and think of somebody else's point of view, or make you aware of possibilities that you before were not aware of. But poetry can do that for you, and I never thought of that kind of moment. Poetry has all kinds of good things for it. It makes you aware, gives you connections, possibilities, lots of stuff. Lots of good stuff.
Lots of good stuff for the brain and life. And, being grateful about stuff, understanding stuff is so important. Now, I know you have 2 other books. Any future upcoming events or promotions you want to talk about? Any upcoming books?
I have some poems. I want to do a volume 2 of Poems of Everyday Life, but I'm not at the point of getting them up, but I am in more of collecting them and getting ideas of how I want to go about it the next time and what ones I want to do. I'd like to do some more books. I've got the Christmas poems. I've got the patriotic poems. I recently printed off poems of comfort out on just paper and put them together and took them to my husband. He's in a nursing home since disease. And he's about almost 100 miles from me. So he doesn't see him very often, and he gets discouraged. So I printed off a handful of poems that are uplifting and comforting, and I got that might make another theme of another book to maybe do that.
We talk a lot about care centers and people with aging, Alzheimer's, and different things. Maybe a book for calming the mind or just improving the quality of life for people that are in those types of care facilities. They're pretty much shut-ins.
Right.
And locked in there, and families don't really visit as much as they should. That might be a good poem book for people to read when they're stuck in those places.
Yeah, it'd be something that I could take, distribute in nursing homes, put it in restaurant with them.
Yeah, might be a good idea.
Pick them up and read them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know a lot of patients, they're always trying to come up with things to pass the time, and it's just such a mind melter of, I don't know, I think if you have dementia or Parkinson's, TV might be the type that might contribute to more brain rot than you already have. That joke.
You can certainly get tired of it after a while. With my breaking my leg and not being able to do much, I've certainly gotten plenty tired of TV.
Yeah, they'll do it. You're just like, is there anything that has a good plot for change? Yeah. They all seem to be all the same nowadays, where it's the same silliness. And I know it's good versus evil, and you hope good wins.
Or home remodeling or food chef stories. After a while, it's just another recipe on the plate or whatever.
Yeah, I have the same problem with OnlyFans. I had to get that joke in there. So, Suzanne, thank you for coming to the show. Give people a final pitch out to pick up your books, your .com, where people can find you, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you. Yes, the website, Crowning Touch Artistry, it's hosted by Weebly, so that would be crowningtouchartistry.weebly.com. There, they can also find my paintings there, if they're interested in paintings instead of poems. And there's other things on there as well. And then Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google Book, like I mentioned earlier, and some other websites as well. I think if you just Google the title that you're interested in, you'll find lots of places where they're available.
There you go.
Get them. Get them all.
Get them. Get them all now.
Yeah, I think they range from $10 or $12 to, I think the coffee table books, maybe about $20, $25, maybe less. So they're not real expensive.
Thank you very much for coming on the show, Suzanne. We really appreciate it.
I certainly enjoyed it, and I'm glad you had me today, and look forward to maybe doing it again someday.
We've enjoyed it as well. If somebody's writing in, congratulations on the books, poetry lovers and stuff like that. So Thank you very much for coming on. Folks, order per book wherever fine books are sold. It is entitled, the one that we let off with, Christmas Poems by Suzanne W. Gwynn. Be sure to refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTok and all this crazy place on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next.
You've been listening to the most amazing, intelligent podcast ever made to improve your brain and your life. Warning, consuming too much of the Chris Voss Show podcast can lead to people thinking you're smarter, younger, and irresistible sexy. Consume in regularly moderated amounts. Consult a doctor for any resulting brain bleed.